Good evening. I did a 2-day trip to Williamsburg and some of the sites around the William and Mary campus and in the city of Williamsburg itself that appear in my short film screenplay and Expulsion, which is based on my Do As To Tell book, and that I went over December 26th. And I just wanted to show you a little bit, some pictures and a couple of videos I made. Here's a map of the area. Right here is where the William and Mary campus is, and here is out here is where I stayed at the Marriott's at the Ford's Colony, and it's kind of complicated to drive there and through all these country roads and the dark at night. Not the most convenient place if you want food right there and everything. So we're actually staying in a resort. But we'll talk. There was something interesting about it. We'll get to that. And just to refresh your memory that from previous videos that um, the campus is right here. This is Boundary Street, and you go up. There's a bus station and railroad over here. The visitor center is over here. Some of the buildings are out here, and the dorm I lived in was right there off of Boundary Street in Prince George. We've done that before. So let's just go. Let me first just go through a few of the pictures um, that I have, and then this is one of, I think that's Chancellor's Hall, which was Rogers Hall, down where I started and made a walk to meet my parents. That's corner Brown Hall. These are some stills. That's the Wren building at night, very impressively lighted. That's the Sunken Garden. You go down some steps behind the Wren building, and there's a lot of stuff, but usually they have like homecoming weekend festivities there and the guards and so forth. That's the path back out to Duke of Gloucester from the Wren building. That's the Wren building from a distance. Again, impressively lighted. There's more lights around it. There's a map. That's Eastern State Hospital, which came up in conversation when I was told I would have to see a psychiatrist. I was not going to go there, but the place turned up. That's another Eastern State Hospital, and not too far from Ford's Colony, actually, out in the wooded area. And that's a frozen lake. There was some ice from the cold spell. They had some snow on the ground in the shady areas left, which of course is gone now. This was Tuesday and Wednesday. That's in front of the motel, the Marriott Motel in the Ford's Colony. This is a bus, a WATA bus, and I went to the bus station to check on bus schedules from Richmond to Williamsburg. You couldn't find any Greyhound buses anymore, and when I went to look it up in Union Station, they couldn't find any either. It seems like they went to another company, and I went to the station here, and yes, it's WATA provides regular bus service from Richmond to Williamsburg. So if you come from Washington, you come to Richmond. I guess you go to Richmond on Greyhound or something first and change. So they do have the bus service, and they also have train service, 2 trains a day each way. There's the railroad tracks. Now that's the visitor center, or that's a plaque in front of the visitor center, which I went to Wednesday morning. I think that's on Boundary Street in Duke of Gloucester, where I waited for my parents. That's Brown Hall, which is being renovated from Prince George Street side. That's a drawing of what's going to look like on the rent. This is the gazebo in front of the motel that I stayed at Ford Center. That's another sort of, cupola. And that's another Brown Hall picture. And you can see the construction that they're doing. And they're going to build another building here in this yard, and a very modern building next to the dorm, I think, as they do the renovation. And my room was on the other side of that building, but it was on the second floor. It looked like one of these. And here's them at the visitor center. That's an old map, just like a Google map, but that's a model of William and Mary, and that's the Wren Building, and that's Boundary Street there, and what it was like in colonial times. And that's the rest of Williamsburg and modeled in colonial times. The story of a patriot, a movie that is shown at the visitor center, Rockefeller's plaque. There's the Williamsburg Inn, a couple of pictures. That's picture near the end, I think. There's the Williamsburg Inn again from a distance, and driving up to it and up closer to it, and the front of it, and some buildings behind, some of the colonial buildings, attractions. So let me now play, first of all, this video, which is, I'm leaving the motel, the Marriott Motel, but it happens to be architecturally very similar to the dorm building. It just happens to look a lot like the dorm building. So I can sort of simulate what it was like to leave the dorm building when I had found that note on my doors and that screenplay to go see the dean on Friday night after Thanksgiving. So that this is just a very brief video that sort of simulates my leaving the building. This particular Marriott hotel motel building in the Ford Center in Williamsburg. It's in a wooded area, the Jamestown Commons. Does look a little bit like Brown Hall architecturally. So if you wanted to film the scene where I'm leaving the dorm and then going out into the street to go to rent, you could actually film the leaving of the building here. It's kind of interesting. I noticed how similar it looks. So now let me play two videos. This is the walk from Brown Hall. That's the porch of Brown Hall. We're simulating the walk you would have done. It's under renovation now, as you can see. It's being the building. It takes about 4 minutes, I think. And there's another building that's going to be built right here. Yeah, 3.5 minutes. Right in that space. But this is the walk you would have done November 24th, 1961. So we'll just do it. Down Boundary Street to where the wedge of Richmond Road and Jamestown Road intersects in front of the Wren Building. We've gotten to the entrance to Brown Hall, to the Wren Building property. In those days, it was 1961, Duke of Gloucester Street was open to traffic. It's not anymore. And you would have across the street here. I guess I should have a drone to film myself doing this. I should learn to use drones. Like the way Max Reisinger does in his videos. At night now, the Wren building is very colorful.
about a 700-foot, 800-foot walk, I think.
Going to meet the Dean of Men when called in. 5 o'clock the day after Thanksgiving, when the campus was open, we had Thanksgiving Day off. This was a very strange situation to be in. A day that would change the course of my life, it turns out.
So far, 2 hours, 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And you would have gotten through this front door, which then was open. 3 minutes and 30 seconds plus about 45 seconds to get from your dorm room to the street. So it would have.
All right. So now I'm going to play one more video, which is this one. And it starts in front of Chancellor Hall, which was Rogers Hall then.
This was what Rogers Hall was in 1961.
But the book says I met my parents at Rogers Hall.
Here.
Actually, I think I met them closer to the Wren building.
Someplace then.
I've looked this up.
Met my parents right around here, near the Wren building.
It's a little closer to the Wren building. And that's Tucker. The next building is Tucker Hall now. Chancellor Hall and Tucker Hall. But Chancellor Hall was Rogers Hall then.
See how long it takes.
So I would have walked from Chancellor's Hall. We're at a chemistry class, and I would have walked about this far. This is about where I would have met them, actually. So it would have taken about a little more than a minute or a minute and a half to get there. And then I would have walked to the car after they asked to meet me at Duke Gloucester Street. I would have walked to the car, and this was a longer walk. Building's quite impressive at night. Beautifully lit. And this way you walk to the north of the building, to Duke of Gloucester Street. It's a pretty long walk.
Past the room where I would have had the meeting with the dean in Wren Hall.
Now we're in the yard in front of the Wren building, and it's still a pretty good hike to Boundary Street and Duke of Gloucester Street.
The walk turns diagonal.
And a movie wouldn't take all this time in a short film, of course. You would just show a few seconds of each segment. Because you can't take that kind of time in a short film. But this is just a demonstration.
And would have crossed the street.
Now this was in the morning. This was around 10 in the morning on Tuesday, November 28th, 1961. And cars could drive then on Duke of Gloucester Street. At that time, they could.
And I would have waited for my parents, my father, to pick me up right about here. And when I got into the car, he said, "This has come as a blow to you, Bill. We have to take you out of school." That walk took almost 5 minutes. So that's how much time my parents had to think about what they would do about me.
You could say that it was probably my parents were driving around the dorm building and around the Duke of Gloucester Street and thinking about, and then wrapping back around and thinking about would they even continue supporting me. I was being thrown out of school because I had admitted I was a latent homosexual. Basically, I had admitted I was a gay living in a dorm, and in 1961, that was thought to be a violation of the privacy of other boys, just like it was thought to be in the military when the subject came up in 1993. And that's not to be confused with the transgender issue now that Trump has raised. This was don't ask, don't tell for gays themselves in the military. Although Hegseth made a comment about that it was a slippery slope to lift the ban, to lift don't ask, don't tell, and then invite all kinds of other things. And possibly it was somewhat. He walked that comment back. But we're going to have to watch and see what happens politically, of course, with not only the trans issue, but with what Vance called normal gays. That's kind of an interesting term. Maybe it's dismissive. We have to see what happens. But I thought I would do a little bit of my own movie making and thought that this would be interesting. And I do thank you for listening tonight.